the 37th Psalm. We're going through a series on wise words from the past or wise sayings from the Old Testament. This is our last one in this particular series. Next week we will not have Sunday night service because of our associational meeting, and then the next Sunday night Michael will be preaching to you. I'll be gone. Christy and I are going to get out of town for a few days, so I won't be here. And then starting first Sunday night in October, we're going to start a different series on Sunday night. We're going to look at the affirmations of God from 1 John. God is eternal, God is gracious, those kind of things. So we're going to look at that. So this is our last one in this series, and I thought I would close with one that probably you can relate to. I heard somebody say one time, "Lord, give me patience and give it to me right now." Can you relate? And we find that kind of humorous because it's true. How many of you have ever thought about the fact of how impatient we are as a society? We use a microwave to cook our meals. It's like buy it at the grocery store. It's in a pre-packaged thing. You just slide it out of the cardboard, stick it in the microwave, push some buttons, and it's done. We use 5G internet. We have streaming services we use YouTube and all that to get our TV service at home. And one of the beauties that I find in it is when a TV show starts coming on, down at the bottom is the best little tab ever. It'll say skip intro. And I can just click on that and it'll go right to you. I don't have to see those commercials or see those advertisements. I just skip it, because I'm impatient. I'm ready to get to the show. And maybe this is you, maybe it's not. Have you ever found yourself getting and I live this because me and Christy go to a drive-through to get food 2 times a day, 7 days a week. That's we live in a drive-through, or we get my daddy to go, or we get Christy's mama to go. But somebody in my family is in a drive-through twice a day for 7 days a week, and I try to time it right, because if I pull up and there's more than 2 cars in the drive-through line, I get real annoyed, because I know I'm going to have to stay there a while, because I'm not patient. Patience isn't just hard; it feels impossible sometimes. It feels like you just can't go, especially when wickedness prospers. We get really impatient when we see people that's not living for the Lord doing well, and you and I seem to be struggling. We can't deal with that. And so what I think I've done is right. I pray faithfully for it. I serve diligently. I work. I try to do right, and things still go wrong. And I look at other people that's not trying to do right, and they're prospering, and I get really impatient with it. And so I wonder sometimes, God, what are you waiting on? What's the hold up? Can't you be doing something? Psalm 37 is written for that tension. Psalm 37 is a psalm written for just that scenario. If you look at verse 25 in chapter 37, David's older now. And so he's looking back on life now, and he's offering fatherly wisdom to a younger generation. That's what Psalm 37 is. And so David's lived his life, and he's went through a lot of stuff. David's son tried to kill him. Saul tried to kill him. David's been on the run. David's waited patiently. David is a guy that Samuel, the high priest of God, came to David and said, out of all these people, God's chosen you to be the next king. And David's a teenage kid, but David has to wait 20 years. And so David gets real impatient. He gets tempted a lot. He's trying to kind of take matters into his own hands. But he doesn't, and he learns to trust, and he learns to be. He makes a lot of mistakes, but he learns. And so now at the end of his life, he writes for us Psalm 37, and he's trying to say, I've learned these things. I'm trying to pass them on to you so that you guys can learn, and so that you can grow and maybe eliminate some of the mistakes that I've made. It's not a lament. It's not where David is sitting, saying these things went wrong and I'm sad. It's not even a praise. It's a plea. It's David's plea for patience. And so David is, I mean, in some of his last words that he writes, he's reflecting on his life, and he's trying to say, here's what I've learned. Here's what I want you guys to learn, and it's patience. And he said, I want you to learn to be patient. Out of all this, this is what I take from my life. And when David writes this, he's not talking about passive waiting. He's not talking about just sitting in a chair. And Christy's out there with Grief Share, so I can tell this story. When me and Christy was dating, I went to Florida with her parents, and some friends of ours went. Actually, my family was, some of my family was there, and some friends of ours from Rockmart came, and we were supposed to meet them for dinner one night. And me and Christy were young. We ain't got married yet. I was probably 19, she was probably 16, somewhere around in there, 18, 16, something. And her daddy wanted to go fishing. He had one of his kinfolks that lived down in Florida, and he wanted to go fish. So he's like, Jeff, you want to go fishing? Well, this is a guy whose daughter I'm dating and planning on marrying, so I can't say no. So even though I'm not a fisherman, so I said, yeah, I'll go. Let's go. So we got on this little bitty boat and went out into the bay and fished. And Christy said, y'all be back at 4 o'clock or whatever to get ready, so we go meet these people. Well, 4 o'clock, we're still sitting on the boat, out in the middle. And I said, Clarence, it's 4 o'clock. Shouldn't we go back? And he said, what's she going to do? They'll learn. And so we're just sitting out there. And we got back about, 6, 7 o'clock, 2 or 3 hours later. And I'll never get this till the day I die. When I opened that room and walked in, Christy was sitting in a rocking chair, and she was rocking back and forth. And if the look on her face could kill. She was not happy because she was getting a little impatient. We were not back in time. Of course, when we got alone, I said, it was your daddy. I was ready to come in, but it was all him. And she believed, she believed it, and we're still married. So it stuck. But this is what David is trying to say. After all that I've been through in my life, and after everything that I've been put through, everything that people's tried to do to me, now that I'm older, and I'm looking back and looking at the life lessons that I've learned that I want to pass on to you, David said it's got to be patience. It's got to be not passive patience, but an active waiting. Not passive waiting, but an active waiting. Trusting patience in God, knowing that God is going to deliver. And so I want us to walk through Psalm chapter 37 and look and see what David said. And I will ask you, if you don't mind, I'm just going to read 11 verses. So if you want to stand with me, let's read Psalm 37, verses 1 through 11. And then later we're going to jump down to verse 25. But let's look at verse 1, starting in verse 1. Do not fret because of evildoers. Be not envious toward wrongdoers, for they will wither quickly like the grass and fade like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he will do it. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your judgment as the noonday. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who carries out wicked schemes. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret, it leads only to evil doing. For evildoers will be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord, they will inherit the land. Yet a little while, and the wicked man will be no more, and you will look carefully for his place, and he will not be there. But the humble will inherit the land, and will delight themselves in abundant prosperity. Thank you. You can be seated. I appreciate you standing for that. Again, these are David's words to a younger generation. Notice how many times he says, wait patiently, don't fret, trust in the Lord. He says it over and over and over again. Verses 1 and 2 is his warning to those of us who are impatient. And I'll be honest with you, my character flaw is impatience. I don't like to wait. If we need something, I'm ready for it to happen. I don't want to. I understand praying and all that, But when I pray, I want God to do it now. Like I'm praying for something I want to answer in an hour. I give him an hour. But sometimes it don't work out that way. And so David gives us the warning to people like me in verses 1 and 2. And look what he says in those verses. Do not fret because of evildoers. Be not envious toward the wrongdoers, for they'll wither quickly like the grass, and they'll fade like the green herb. This is the temptation of the impatient. What's it like to be impatient? What's the problem? You start to fret, or you start to worry. You start to be envious. And David says, don't do that. Because here's the temptation. When I'm waiting on God, I'm trying to pray, and I'm trying to wait, and I'm trying to be patient, and then I look at wicked people, and they're prospering, it's easy for my heart to become toxic. Because I'm thinking I'm waiting, I'm trying to do things right. And they're not. I think I've told y'all this story. When me and Christy first got married, I got it from her daddy. We got married in 1990, and he gave me a 1984 Chevrolet pickup truck. It was light blue. It had, the seats were all torn to pieces in it. The gas hand didn't work. I ran out of gas multiple times because I just didn't know, or I say I didn't know. It had no heat. It had no air, but it ran. When I turned the switch, the engine came to life, and I could go from my house to work. And I was teaching school at Seartown High School, and it was fine in the fall, and it was fine in the spring. But when May hit, and I had to go to work in May, it was like driving in a sauna, and my shirt was just wringing wet with sweat when I got out of the truck at work, and I was a youth pastor, and so I was working all day at the school trying to teach kids. I was working in the afternoons trying to teach kids, and I was trying to pray. I was trying to do right, trying to start my family, trying to do the way God wanted me to do it. And that's what I was driving. And I was making decent money. School teachers don't make a fortune, but I was making okay. But that's what I was driving. And then I had some students that were, just to call it what it is, drug dealers. And I taught them. As a matter of fact, when I taught them, one of our teachers at school had one of those police radios, and they were twin boys. They were in my class and they were in her class. And when I'd get to work on Monday morning, she would say, guess what they were up to this weekend? The police were chasing them all through town. They were shooting at each other and acting crazy. Police were chasing them all over the place. And then they come to school on Monday morning. Well, they drove nice cars. Real nice cars. Air blasting in there. The heat was working fine, sunroofs and all this kind of stuff. And there's a couple of times where I caught myself thinking, this is not fair. This is not right. That's the way they're living. They're out there selling drugs and shooting at each other, running from the police. And I have a job. I have a wife. I'm a student pastor. I've got a child on the way, and this is what I'm driving. This is what David's warning about in verses 1 and 2. That when we're trying to wait on God and we're trying to be patient, trying to do right, then you look at the wicked and they're prospering. It has a pretty strong pull for your heart to become bitter, because you don't know what God's waiting on. You don't know why they're getting ahead and you're not. You don't know why God's letting them be blessed and you're not. And so you keep asking the question, why does dishonesty prosper? Why do these people prosper? Why am I stuck in neutral while all these people are cruising in the fast lane? It makes no sense to me. And so David uses the word fret. It's more than just worry. Fret is an erosion of your soul. It's deeper than just worry. As a matter of fact, the Hebrew word for fret that he uses here, kara, means to burn or to kindle. It's an erosion. It's an eating away of something. It's losing part of yourself. It's the slow internal boil of resentment. That's what David's talking about. When I'm waiting on God and I'm thinking, okay, I'm trying to do everything right, but the wicked people are prospering, there's a slow boil going on the inside, that if you're not careful, it'll just overflow and it'll start to affect everything. James chapter 1 verse 20 says, "For the anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God." And David's warning that that's what's going to happen. When I become impatient and I start looking around and wondering why are they succeeding and I'm not, I don't just explode. It's a slow boil that just starts kindling on the inside until it just causes all kind of rot. Impatience with God turns into, here's what David says. He says, don't fret and then don't envy. Because if I start to be impatient with God, then I actually start to envy the wicked. And I start to wish I had what they had. Why can't I live like them? Why can't I have those houses and those cars? So that resentment, that slow resentment, starts to fester into envy of somebody that's not living a godly life. And David said, you got to be careful about that, because that's what impatience does. It has a propensity to eat you away from the inside. And then he says, remember their end. Remember how it ends for them. Evil may prosper now, but it won't last. It's coming to an end pretty quick. Look how he describes it. They will wither quickly like the grass. Every time I read that verse, I imagine Georgia summers. Because you can have a nice green yard and it's beautiful. But a couple of weeks of no rain, it just crunches under your foot. That's what he's describing. Their life blooms for a while. It's green. It looks nice. But it's not going to be long till it just fades into oblivion. It's just gone. So David says, don't envy what God is going to judge. God's eventually going to judge that seeming prosperity. So don't envy it. Just trust God. And so verses 3 through 7 now, he gives us a prescription for patience. Look what he says. He's not just offering commands, but kind of counteractions to the temptation. When we're tempted to fret, look what David says. And I'm gonna outline these or highlight them, and then I'm gonna go back and explain them. Look at the words he uses in verses 3 through 7. Trust, do good, dwell in the land, delight, commit, rest, and wait patiently. And so if we unpack that recipe, he says, trust in the Lord and do good, verse 3. Just trust in God and do good. Don't freeze in fear. Don't burn in anger. Don't get upset. Don't start envying what God is going to judge. Do something. And don't just do something good. Do something good that honors God, that brings honor and glory to Him. Patience, it's not just inactivity. It's not that we're just sitting around all the time. It means being faithful while we wait. Doing something while we wait. Working for God while we wait. Serving God and serving others while we wait. It's not just passivity where I decide, okay, I've prayed and now I'm just going to sit back and do nothing. I'm going to do something. It's like a farmer. A farmer plants and then he waters and then he waits. He's not just sitting around twiddling his thumbs. He trusts the process. He does what it takes to get the crop to grow. Galatians chapter 6 verse 9 says, let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we will reap if we don't grow weary. Let's keep doing something, and let's keep doing good. As a church, as believers, sometimes it's easy to get discouraged of what's going on in the world. We were all rocked probably by Charlie Kirk's assassination this past week. And me and Christy's talked about this at length. All he did was talk about his biblical values. This is what I believe. That's all he did. This is what I believe. And if you disagree, let's just talk about it. Let's try to find common ground. And they shot him for it. They killed him for it. And as a Christian, I see it and I think, well, what's the point of doing good? What's the point of of adopting Charlie Kirk's mentality? What's the point of trying to dialogue? What's the point of trying to have a conversation? What's the point in doing that when they're just going to kill you? They're not going to listen. They're not going to talk. They're not interested in that. It is the way it appears. But that's what Paul said in Galatians. Don't lose heart in doing good. Do something. God will one day vindicate the righteous. There is going to come a day where Jesus comes back, claims the bride of Christ, pulls us up into heaven with him, and makes all things new. That day's coming. In the meantime, you and I are waiting. And sometimes we wait patiently, sometimes we wait impatiently, and we catch ourselves saying, God, what are you waiting on? It's just getting worse and worse. People are crazy. And so why try? As a church, why do we try? There's been many a times where we've had activities up here and we put tents out, we gave hot dogs out, and we've invited the community. Hey, you come. We'll give you a hot dog. We'll help you out. Well, they'll come and eat a hot dog, then we'll never see them again. And it's easy to say, and it's easy to get a mentality of, well, let's just quit doing that because it's not being effective. But we don't know that it's not being effective. We don't know what people are thinking. We don't know what God's doing in people's hearts. And so Paul had to tell us, basically echoing what David said in Psalm 37, don't lose heart in doing good. Because eventually you will sow what you reap. Eventually you will do okay. Eventually God will vindicate the righteous. You just have to keep doing good. There's never a time when you say enough's enough. You have to stop. You have to keep doing good. Then look at verse 4. He says, delight yourself in the Lord. This is the heart of patience. The heart of patience is loving the giver more than the gift. That's the heart of true patience. The heart of patience is I love God more than the gifts that he gives. And so I'm patient and I trust him. I delight in him. My joy is in him, not the stuff that he gives, not the things. And so when I was driving that 1984 Chevrolet truck with no air and no heat in it, I had to come to the realization or come to myself like the prodigal son and realize I have to love God more than the things that I have. It doesn't matter what I'm driving. It doesn't matter what I'm wearing. It doesn't matter what I'm eating at night. I have to love the giver of the gift more than the gift. When I start loving the gift more than the giver, then my impatience kicks in. Then my envy kicks in. Then my fret kicks in. And then I just get depressed and lose all sense of reality. And so David says, you have to delight in God. Find your joy in him, not the things. How many of us has ever witnessed this? You give a toddler a gift. We've did it with our own kids, did it with my own grandkids. You give a toddler a gift, a cool gift. A gift that you thought, it's going to really rock their world, man. They're going to love this. And you give it to them, and they're really excited. They open it up, and they push toys aside, and they play with the box. And me and Chrissy has looked at each other before and said, I could have just went to Walmart and bought a $1.50 box and just, taped the ends of the box up and just pushed it out and forward, and they'd had fun with it. The toy, they're secondary. They didn't care. And here's kind of the lesson that teaches us. Joy sometimes is found in the most unexpected places. You expect the toddler to like the toy, but they end up liking the box that the toy came in instead. And as the giver of the gift, it's really frustrating, because that gift costs a lot of money, and they're playing with the box. But it's unexpected. Joy comes in unexpected places. If in this scenario, God can be the box. Find your joy in him. Not necessarily what he gives. Not the expression of it, but him. And look what David says. Then he'll give you the desires of your heart. That doesn't mean he's going to give you everything you want. It means if he's your delight, he'll change your wants. He'll reshape what you'll need to be happy. Then in verse 5, he says, commit your way to the Lord. The Hebrew word for commit literally means to roll. To roll like you're rolling on a path with God. you're committing to him, and you're just rolling with him. It's like pushing a heavy load onto something stronger. In other words, patience is not passive. Patience is active. Waiting is active. It's doing something. It's intentional surrender. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 through 6 says, trust in the Lord, acknowledge him, and then he'll make your path straight. Because you're committed. You're rolling on that path to him. And when I commit to him, the path that I'm rolling on, he'll make it straight. He'll make it known. And I think that I need this to be happy, but he's going to change the desires of my heart. He's going to change what I need, and it's going to be very unexpected. It's not going to be what I thought it was. It's going to be a whole different ballgame. And in verse 7, he says, rest and wait. That's the hardest part. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. And again, I'll confess to you, I'm not good at that. I'm really not. I mean, Christy will tell you I'm not good at it. I mean, when the Bible tells me over and over again to wait, when I read it, my first response is, I don't think so. Yeah, that's not good. That's not fun. I don't want to do that. Where's the fun in that? Because it's frustrating. Anybody in here familiar with FedEx delivery? Anybody familiar with FedEx? Do you know the dread that you feel when you're waiting on a package that you really need, like at Christmas time, and it's you need it tomorrow, and FedEx says it's on the way and it'll be here today, and if you look on there and it says in all stale, that's the black hole of FedEx. If you ever get a package and it's being delivered from FedEx and it's in all stale, just reorder it. It's not coming. And so here's what I do. I get on my app. I hit track package, and it says on truck, left from all stale on the truck. And I think, okay, it's maybe it's coming. It's not, but at least I'm trying to have some hope. And so I'm like, okay, it won't be 15 minutes later, and I hit refresh. I said, okay, let me check now. And it still says on truck, wait, for delivery. 15 minutes, I hit refresh. It says on truck, waiting for delivery. That's my level of patience. I'm gonna keep refreshing it, until the phone just won't let me refresh it anymore, because I'm impatient. I want to know, and then it'll be 9 o'clock at night, and I'll hit refresh, and it'll say on truck for delivery, and I'm like, that's not right, and then I hit panic, because about midnight I hit refresh, and it says your package has been delayed, and I say to myself, no kidding, I kind of figured that, but where is it? I want to know where it is. That's impatience, and that's really what David's talking about. That kind of level of frustration and impatience. Here's what David says. I haven't learned this, and again, I'm just being transparent and honest. David says, stop hitting refresh, and I can't. I can't stop hitting refresh. David says, rest and trust God. In theory, I can do that. In theory, I know that's right. I know I'm supposed to rest and trust God, and I believe that. I trust God. I believe it. Because God's not Amazon. God's not FedEx. So I believe I can trust him. But in practicality, I'm going to hit refresh over and over and over again. It's a character flaw that I have, even though I know to do better. And so David is telling us in Psalm 37, you're not going to be happy till you stop hitting the refresh button. Just quit hitting it. And then verses 8 through 11, he gives us the perspective of somebody that's patient, not the impatient. Because we're contrasting the righteous with the wicked, the patient with the impatient. And so he's telling us what it looks like. Impatience, and I'm waiting to see how many loud verbal amens I get from this. Impatience leads to stupid decisions. Anybody agree with that with a real loud amen? Because when you get impatient, you try to fix it yourself, and you're like, okay, I got to do it now, and then you get in a mess. Prime example, Abraham. God said, I'll give you a son. And God told him over and over, I'll give you a son. And Abraham said, well, is it going to be Eliezer, my servant? God said, no, it's not going to be him. You're going to have a son. It's going to be your son. But he got impatient because he's older. He didn't like to wait. And then he had Ishmael. And when he had Ishmael, God still cared about Ishmael, but Ishmael was not the promised son. And so Ishmael and Isaac didn't get along. Ishmael got banished by Abraham because Abraham's impatience led to a stupid decision. That led to conflict between the two sons. And guess what? 4,000 years later, they're still fighting. They're still in conflict because Abraham couldn't wait. He couldn't be patient. God kept saying, I'll give you a son. And Abraham said, okay, but maybe I should help you, because I'm not so sure I can wait. If you get impatient, you start playing God like Abraham did, and you make stupid decisions. And then you regret them. You can't really change them. You can't fix them. What's done is done, and you got to live with the consequences of it. And so David's warning us not to do that based on his life, based on his experience. And then look what David says. The meek will inherit the land, the humble, the meek, and they'll delight themselves in abundant prosperity. Jesus actually quotes that again in Matthew chapter 5, verse 5. The meek will inherit the earth. Patience and meekness is the key. And then look down at verse 25. Here's the way this thing ends. There's the testimony of the tried. All right? This is David's David pulls out the old man card, basically. Look at verse 25 at what he says. I have been young, and now I'm old. He's pulling out the age card. Yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken or his descendants begging bread. It's like David is saying, hey, I've lived a while. I've seen things. I've observed stuff. I know. I have experience in this. And David said, here's what I know. God never abandons his own. It's just not going to happen. God doesn't forget the righteous. You may think he has, and you may think that your life is not right. It's not like you planned it. It's not scripted like it's supposed to be. And you may think God's forgotten you, but he's not. God never forgets the righteous. He never forgets his own. But God continues to give us divine provision and take care of it in his way, in his timing. You and I just can't get ahead of him. God sustains and God honors those who walk with him. Look at verse 28. Go back a verse. For the Lord loves justice and does not forsake his godly ones. Listen, we need the wisdom of those who walk with God through decades. We need to learn from their scars and their stories, their stripes, their life. We need to learn from that. That's why it's important to me that the older people in a church bond with younger people in the church, because we can't forsake the wisdom of those who've lived their life. You get knowledge with age, and you can pass those things down, and you can help develop a new generation for Christ. Show them what it means to be a godly father. Show them what it means to be a godly grandfather. Show them what it means to be a godly contributing church member. God has a plan for all of us, and this is what David's saying. I was young, now I'm old, I've lived my life, and here's what I'm trying to teach you now. I'm trying to show you some things. And then look at verse 30 through 40. This is the final section of this psalm, and he's talking about the future of the faithful ones, because the emphasis is very clear. The future belongs to the faithful. Look at what he says in verse 31. The law of his God is in his heart. His steps do not slip. Verse 33, the Lord will not leave him in his hand or let him be condemned when he is judged. Waiting doesn't mean wandering. You don't wait by twiddling your thumbs. You wait by keeping his ways and keeping his statutes and working and serving. That's how you wait. It's the image of a soldier on post. You don't move till the commander gives you the order to move. But you're not just twiddling your thumbs. You're watching. You're on guard. You're making sure things are right. Isaiah chapter 40:31 is my favorite verse because I'm trying to learn it. I try to live it. Yet those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. In other words, it's not lazy waiting. That's leaning waiting. That's trusting waiting. That's what that is. You ever wonder why they call it waiting tables for a server in a restaurant? I wait tables. It sounds like you just say, that's my table, and I'll just sit over here in a corner and watch it, at a waiting table. But what's a waiter or a waitress waiting tables do? They serve. They're constantly checking. If they're good, hey, you need more tea? You need more water? Is everything okay? Can I bring you some butter? You need some ketchup? You need a to-go box? I mean, they're it's not just that they're passively sitting around watching you eat. They're actively engaged in the service to try to help you make your dining experience better. That's the waiting David's talking about. It's not lazy waiting. It's service waiting. It's doing something for him. God upholds and rescues his own. That's the way this ends. 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 9 says, the Lord is not slow about his promise, but is patient towards you, not wishing for anyone to perish. Jesus is patient. He waited on all of us to repent. For some of us, it took a while. For some of us, it was longer than others. But he waited. He didn't wish for any to perish. He still doesn't. As a matter of fact, that's why I think God continues to tarry his coming, or God does anyway, because Jesus doesn't want anybody to perish. He wants to give people time to repent, because some of us take longer than others. So Jesus is patient. Listen, so in a panicked world, because everybody's panicked right now. They shot Charlie. What are we going to do? I mean, I hear all this stuff on social media. Oh, we're at war. We're at this. People are panicked. People are panicked. What's going to happen next? Who's going to fire the next shot? Who's going to be the next one killed? What's the next rhetoric going to be? What's the next accusation going to be? I mean, we live in a panicked world. You and I as Christians, we just got to be patient. God is in control. God absolutely knows what he's doing. It's not like God sitting in heaven saying, okay, I'm going to allow this person to be killed, and I'm going to allow this person to say this. But God does know that we live in a sin-cursed world, that things happen. He knows it's going to happen, but God can absolutely use what happens for his honor, for his glory, if you and I are patient and just wait on him. The wicked may prosper for a while, but it's not going to last. So let's be patient. That's my prayer. Let's just be patient. Let's wait on God. David's not just urging us to wait. He's pleading with us to have patience. This is a plea. He's seen the downfall of the wicked. He knows what waiting does. He knows what patience does. And so he's just encouraging you to learn sooner than he did. So that's my prayer. Let me pray for you, and we can be dismissed. Father, thank you so much for this time. Thank you for this opportunity. I pray that you'll help us to maintain some patience in a panicked, sin-cursed world that seems out of control a lot of times. It does to us. But all those waves that are over our head are under your feet. You're in control, and we trust you, and we praise you for it. Help us as a church to be active while we're waiting, to be looking for ways to serve you until you call us home one day. And we'll always give you the praise and glory. In Christ's name we pray.